Hello and welcome to the 2016 trade deadline special. I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Jazz NBA insider, and I'm in Washington, D.C. Jazz will play here tonight. I'll take you for a few minutes as we try to take you down to the wire and all the deals that are being made and happening and taking place and get reaction as well. I'd love to get your questions as well. If possible. The only real way to do that, I think, there is a comment tracker on the Hangout. If you are able to throw that in there, if you watch the comment tracker over on the right-hand side. So hopefully you can put some comments in, or I'll go to my Twitter to do that as well. So thank you very much for everyone's tuning in. From a Jazz standpoint, the NBA TV is behind me. The big news of the day is, as of right now, the Jazz have made a single move. They have traded a second-round draft pick, Denver's 2018 second-round pick, to Atlanta for Shelvin Mack. Shelvin Mack is a 6'3", 200-pound big point guard who's probably better defensively than anyone we have on the roster right now. And that is the purpose for that acquisition. No question. The reason you're going to go get Shelvin Mack is depth and defensive purposes. He's not a great outside shooter. He's been a good two-point shooter. He's a decent pick-and-roll player. He's actually done well in the pick-and-roll when needed. He is someone Quinn Snyder knows, and he's someone the Jazz have actually talked about for probably over a month now. I've heard this name. So this is not new. And this is survey the landscape, see what else might be there. Nothing else becomes available, and so you put that guy out there. If you are watching this on a Hangout, there's a chat feature over on the left-hand part. And I have tried to initiate it, and you're welcome to send in your questions. Otherwise, I will, of course, also be checking it on the Twitter thing at Locked On Sports. As we are talking, one move that just took place is that Markieff Morris has been traded to the Washington Wizards. Chris Humphries, who I think was out anyway tonight, and DeJuan Blair have been traded, so that means Drew Gooden will play tonight. We have 10 minutes to go to the deadline. The biggest surprise to me right now is that Houston and New Orleans are holding their teams together, honestly. That's the biggest surprise to me. And maybe that Phoenix got somewhat of a protected first-round pick and we'll see how protected for Markieff Morris. And a little bit surprised that Houston got a first-round pick for Montejunas, who I really like. I actually love what the Pistons have done in this draft. So I think there's some value to that. Wizards moved some contracts, really, as well as they got the $8 million Markieff Morris. They cleared off some other space because, as we all know, the Wizards are particularly interested in going to get Kevin Durant. All right, let me get some of your questions. From a Jazz standpoint, there may be more to come. Don't know as of yet. There wasn't a lot to the Ty Lawson talk, by the way. The Ty Lawson talk was, I don't know if it was agent-driven or where it was coming from, but those conversations did not progress deeply. There was never a discussion of compensation, as was reported. Those things are simply just not true. Is really the only way that I can kind of say that to you. So we'll see. A lot of people are discussing whether or not the impact on Trey Burke with the Shelvin Mack deal. And the one thing I would say to that is Trey Burke, it's really up to Trey Burke. So, and what I mean by that is if Trey Burke can defend the point of attack defensively, he'll be fine. He'll play. He's a better offensive player than Shelvin Mack probably is. And sorry, voice has been a struggle a little bit, and so got to keep it hydrated. And so, if he can defend, if he doesn't defend at the point of the attack, then Shelvin Mack will start eating into his minutes. Neto's eating into his minutes because Neto defends better at the point of the attack. So that's, that's where it's on. It's up to Trey. Trey will have plenty of opportunities. He knows the system. He knows what he does. He can score a lot off the bench. And if he's, a pending move in the next 6 minutes, Shelvin Mack is really replacing Eric Green, who's no longer on the roster. But that's the position. The Bryce Cotton, Eric Green position is really the one that Shelvin Mack has taken initially. All right, let's go to the questions. Number one question is, Mack, is he an upgrade defensively against the likes of Curry, Westbrook, Portland guards? Yeah, probably. 6'3", 200. Not an elite athlete. He's been a third-string point guard, sometimes second-string point guard for much of his career. He's not shooting the three well offensively, so that's limited his time, but playing against pretty decent point guards in Schroeder and in Jeff Teague. And so I do think that you have a defensive size, particularly 6'3", 200 upgrade, allows you to switch a little bit more physically. And he's a really smart player. And I think that's something that Quinn really wants, is a smart player. Jared Christensen, been pretty quiet so far. Do you anticipate any major moves? Well, I guess the only major move left would be if Cleveland moved Kevin Love or Houston moved Dwight Howard, and I don't really expect either of those to happen. It's awfully hard to get deals of that magnitude done, and Dwight Howard is a free agent at the end of the year, so it's awfully hard to get someone to rent him. What is Shelvin Mack's PER, true shooting percentage to pack, plus minus? Is he a defensive upgrade to Trey Burke? He is expected to be a defensive upgrade to Trey Burke. He is. His PER and true shooting percentage and three-point percentage and pack are not going to be anything to write home about. You traded a 2018 second-round draft pick for him. So, make sure you understand exactly what you're getting. Woj just tweeted out that Dwight Howard will stay with the Rockets. I'd say, to me, the surprise of this is that Houston and New Orleans look to be taking the same roster back together. Tweets coming in as we head to the deadline. Everyone's trying to get their stuff in. So it doesn't look like the Kings or Chicago or anything done. Shelvin Mack's a negative 0.6 pack this year. If you go back and look at last year, I think it's similar. He's last year on Atlanta with Kyle Korver having his amazing year. Shelvin Mack was a negative 0.5, so neither of those are particularly good. He does not go to the free throw line a lot. He went to the free throw line 4.6% of his possessions this year and 3.8% last year, so he's not driving and creating opportunities for himself. This year he is 4 of 27 from three, so he's not going to be able to shoot the three very well. Last year he shot 31% from three. This year he's actually shooting really well from two. But that's who he is. He's not a wow player. He may give us a subtle upgrade at times, and it could also be, or simply just look at him as an upgrade to your third point guard. He's an upgrade to the 15th roster spot is really, I think that's the way to look at him. He's an upgrade to the 15th roster spot. It's nothing splashy or fancy or anything of that nature. What are the Jazz going to do with Max since we still have Trey? When bigger point guards are out there at 6'3", 200, I think he'll be valuable in that sense. Wizards' first-round pick sent to Phoenix is protected 1 through 19. Wow, or 1 through 9. Wow. Phoenix got a first-round 2016 pick for Markieff Morris. Wow. That's a little surprising. Good for Phoenix. Phoenix got a ton of picks because they they got a ton of picks for Goran Dragic, and so they've loaded up. Now they're obsessed with trying to make the playoffs, which doesn't make a lot of sense while they have all these picks. What happens to Neto in the long run with this pickup? I think Neto has earned the possibility of being a second-round draft backup point guard next year to Dante Exum. I think that had a huge impact on the Jazz not, risking future assets in order to go get a point guard. The Neto has shown that he can play anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes a night, and I think they're very pleased with Neto. And so I think that's a huge aspect of what happened. Neto's been very, very good recently. What do you think Mac's role will be? Third string or step in front of Trey? I think he'll be third string from Jake Carter. He'll be the third string point guard. He's the 15th roster spot. And on nights when Trey is having a defensive problem, I think you will see him get some opportunities against bigger guards. And depending how he plays and how he runs the system and accurately runs the system and works the system to other guys, well, Trey's had a great season. Trey's made huge strides as a player on this team. He has slumped recently. And he needs, that's the only concern I have, that Trey's play over the recent period of time has slipped. He's stopped going to the free throw line. His shooting is off. He regressed a little bit. Hopefully that's not a regression to the mean, and that's just a slump. But I think that's the issue. All right, we have hit the deadline. Lou Williams is staying with the Lakers. His lack of defense seemed to hold everybody off. I'd say the Pistons are the most active and probably the winners in this whole trade deadline. We'll see whether any other news pops here on trade calls. Ben McLemore is staying in Sacramento, according to Mark Stein. Pau Gasol is staying in Chicago, according to Mark Stein. Dwight Howard stays in Houston. It'll be interesting to see how Houston plays together as a unit. I think they went to this deadline certainly expecting to have a different group together. I'm really excited that Trevor Booker stays in Utah. I think that's exciting. I thought there was a high possibility we were going to move Trevor. I think it's a really it's nice to see. I'm a huge fan of Trevor, so it's glad to have him back. With teams having more money and spend in the next years, do you see teams paying high one-year contracts to get above the minimum? The way I hear it is it's going to be absolutely impossible for everybody to get to the minimum next year. There could be as much as $1 million per player handed back to the players next year. It's a lot of what I've heard. Denver's 2018 second-round pick is what the Jazz sent out, by the way. If you were let's see. Not much. Al Horford stays in Atlanta. I think nothing's breaking after the. Someone want to know if I would have done Dwight Howard for Derek Favors. Not a chance. So it looks as though we are done. The trade deadline has happened, and there are no new moves for Utah. So there it is. That is the trade deadline. Shelvin Mack. The Jazz just filled out their 15th roster spot with an NBA player. Cavaliers seem to be finished. Lakers are finished. Send me any of your questions at Locked On Sports on Twitter or jump in, and otherwise we'll wrap this up in a second and see what anyone has to say if there's anything else more to it. So the Jazz just upgraded their 15th roster spot. Nothing flashy, nothing significant. I think they outlined it, and we've all been outlining it all week very well. Alec Burks is still a very important part of this team. They didn't want to give him up in his contract guarantee for the next years. That Dante Exum particularly was a major part of this team, and they didn't want to do anything that was going to impact Dante's development. And I think that it is the biggest issue of all, is not necessarily trying to not necessarily trying to blow up this process for a 30-game quest. But hopefully this team, as it is, with Rudy and Derek together, they've won at about a 51 win rate. And if they can keep that up, they'll make the playoffs and get the experience. So that's kind of where we stand at this point. And the trade deadline, I think, will be known more for what didn't happen than what did. Any truth to Trey requesting a trade, and if so, why didn't the Jazz get a deal? Kirk Heinrich has been traded to the Hawks for a second-round pick. I wonder if it's the same second-round pick. So the Hawks we took Shelvin Mack. I guess we could have had Kirk Heinrich, something similar. Interesting. Kirk Heinrich, a veteran player. That's interesting. Same value for Shelvin Mack as for Kirk Heinrich. Would be interesting on what Heinrich's contract is, I guess, would be the other question there. If Heinrich's contract has a year or two on it, that's a really interesting move by Atlanta, because that gives them some security in when they lose Jeff Teague in the offseason to free agency. If not, then truly Heinrich and Shelvin Mack were the same concept. Let's see what Heinrich's contract is. Kirk Heinrich, $2.84 million this year. Expires in the end of the year. So Jazz got Shelvin Mack on a deal that seems to be similar to what got Kirk Heinrich for Atlanta. No point guard, significant point guard other than Kirk Heinrich was moved. No Drew Holiday, no Jeff Teague, no George Hill. All the hopes of that significant point guard never moved. Check the questions again and wrap this baby up. I'll be on with Scotty and Hands here in a little bit. Any thoughts about Mrs. Burke's karma tweet? You know what? I think it's really hard for any of us to understand what it must be like to be the mother of a child who we love and care for and desperately want to have succeed and have everybody talking about all the time. I mean, the smart move for any NBA parent is to get off these things. That's but it's hard to do. So, I mean, it's not great because, frankly, I don't know what she meant by that tweet, and it is unclear to me what she intended and what it was about. But she leaves that mystery out there by being a public figure and an NBA mom. So I would suggest, if I had a suggestion to her, I would stay away from these things. But she cares passionately about her child. I'm going to have a hard time criticizing someone for that. I think that's the reality. All right, that wraps up the trade deadline. And it's kind of with a nothing particularly exciting. The Jazz added a 15th guy who's an NBA player. Okay, that's worth something. It's not a huge deal, not a franchise changer, but I think the message that the franchise sent for the entire week maintains its consistency, and that is Dante Exum and Alec Burks are still very much parts of this organization and very important to the franchise. That is your trade deadline special with no fireworks.